A very warm welcome to a new episode of Eco Africa. For the next half hour, we'll take you on a journey to a wide variety of different regions. I am Sandra Twinovidio here in Kampala, Uganda, and here is my co-host.
Thanks, Sandra. That's right. Plantations, oases, and ancient forests are just some of the riches on the African continent that our reporters are going to take us to. I am Chris Lems in Lagos, Nigeria, and this is what's on today's program. How an oasis in Tunisia is being revived after decades of wasteful water use. Why seagulls are Spain's little-known environment detectives. And how village residents in Cameroon use gorilla clubs to protect the rainforest. At first, they are green, then they turn yellow, and if you're not careful, they'll go brown. I'm talking about bananas. The popular nutritious fruit has been farmed in Africa for 4,500 years, but a majority of the harvest now end up in Europe. 300,000 tons of them are exported annually from Ivory Coast alone, making it Africa's biggest exporter. Conventional production methods use a lot of pesticides, but some farmers are turning over a new leaf.
Growing bananas requires meticulous work. To prevent the spread of what's known as cigar end rot, Stephanie Conan removes the floral remains from each fruit by hand. Conventional farmers spray the plants with fungicide to combat diseases, but Conan refuses to do that. The bananas grown on her plantation in northern Ivory Coast are organic. There's a lot of demand for our product and we sell everything we produce. Conventional plantations, and there's several around here, produce in large quantities, but they sometimes have problems selling their harvest. But growing bananas in this region is challenging. The land here suffers from drought and desertification. Farming is impossible without irrigation. And only perfect fruit is good enough for export. Whatever fails to make the grade, Conan sends to a factory that produces dried organic bananas which are sold at local markets. It is true that running an organic farm is very labor-intensive, but at the same time, it allows you to produce a lot while avoiding practices that harm our health or cause soil depletion and desertification. We think that if everyone shared the same vision, we could cope with the effects of climate change. But so far, only 5% of bananas in Ivory Coast are grown organically. Whether organic or conventional production, cultivating bananas is not without its challenges. Natural offshoots of banana plants can be infected with diseases. The only way to prevent that from happening is to propagate the plants with cuttings. French company Compagnie Fruitière and its local subsidiary operate a laboratory for this purpose. Here, cuttings are taken from the healthiest plants and used to grow shoots, also known as pulps. When a banana sucker comes in, we remove the meristem, that is to say, the heart. After 4 weeks, the tissue cultures will have blackened and grown a little. After further growth, the shoots are subdivided. These shoots are intended for both conventional and organic plantations. In order to get the highest yield possible with ecological cultivation methods, the company has set up test fields. Here, scientists try out natural pest repellents based on chili pepper or cinnamon. They also make natural barriers from glue that prevent insects from reaching the fruits. Trials are first conducted in a limited area. We test different solutions and depending on the results, we then try them out in larger areas. The company aims to gradually increase the share of organic bananas, but a major problem remains. Most producers around the world grow the Cavendish banana, a variety that travels well and tastes good. but the plants are clones. Since they are all genetically identical, they are very susceptible to diseases and pests. Cultivating other varieties will be of benefit. Farmers need ways to defend themselves, and one of the most effective ways when they go organic is to choose hardier varieties. And this is where organic farms can help, because their products won't have to be negotiated along the value chain. And hopefully, there will be wholesalers who will embrace the idea of having different types of bananas despite the logistical challenges. So far, the Cavendish variety accounts for 91% of all bananas exported to Western countries. Most of those are still produced conventionally, but with demand for organic fruit rising in Europe, the potential to grow that market share is enormous.
Though the international banana market is almost completely dominated by Cavendish bananas, the Cavendish is under threat by fungus. If these genetically identical banana trees are hit by disease, it could mean the end of the entire species, which would majorly affect the whole African markets.
That is very right, Chris, and it already happened once in 1960. That was when a fungus called the Panama disease almost wiped out the Gros Michel banana production. After that, it disappeared from the market. With this in mind, we have a look at why biodiversity is so incredibly important for the plants and also the humans.
The Earth produces a rich variety of plants adapted to wide-ranging habitats around the globe. There are around 400,000 species known to science. Less than 10% are edible. Corn, rice, and wheat account for more than half the global food supply. Ever since humans began adopting a sedentary lifestyle, they have collected seeds to plant. The first crops were cultivated over 10,000 years ago by farmers in Mesopotamia, now modern-day Iraq and Turkey. Some 200,000 varieties of wheat alone have developed from that early stock. Having a wide range of crops and genetic diversity within each variety helps to secure our food supply. The greater the diversity, the smaller the risk of wheat or some other staple being wiped out worldwide by a single pest or disease. That's why seed banks are so important. The oldest is in St. Petersburg and dates back to 1894. Today, the seed bank in Gattersleben, Germany, boasts one of the world's most diverse collections. Many of the seeds stored here are found nowhere else. Large seed archives have now been established all over the world. They each collect various seeds and plants from different regions. Many are then stored at the Global Seed Vault on the Norwegian island of Spitsbergen. But out in the fields, the trend is towards less diversity. During the 20th century alone, an estimated 75% of crop diversity was lost, according to the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization. The reasons are many and varied. The industrialization of agriculture meant crops suddenly had to fulfill different requirements. They have to produce a high yield, all ripen at the same time, and not suffer damage when being harvested by heavy machinery. Our modern globalized trade network means fruit and vegetables now need to stay fresh while being transported over long distances. Very few varieties can live up to those demands. The range of produce in our supermarkets is deceiving. The tomatoes and cucumbers may look different, but genetically they're very similar. This genetic poverty is not without risk. In the 1970s, for example, a virus destroyed 1/4 of the rice harvest across the whole of Asia. It was only through crossbreeding the rice with a wild variety that the crop became resistant to the virus, thus rescuing the world's single most important food staple. For thousands of years, farmers have collected their own seeds and swapped them amongst themselves to improve their harvest and develop new varieties. But in recent decades, a steadily declining number of seed companies has been selling an increasingly limited range of sorts. 95% of cabbage varieties, for example, have already disappeared. The companies design their own crops and secure them with a patent. They supply 2/3 of the global market. Often farmers are unable to collect seeds and are required to buy certain fertilizers and pesticides. But a growing number of people worldwide are seeking to reverse this trend by increasing crop diversity and distributing seeds without patents. A non-profit organization in Austria called Arche Noah, or Noah's Ark, collects seeds of old endangered varieties. It propagates the seeds and then passes them on to a supermarket chain, which sells both the seeds and their produce.
We hear a lot these days about how reviving old farming practices and growing a greater diversity of crops is crucial to ensuring food security in the future. It is a lesson people in a remote oasis community in Tunisia have taken to the heart. After exhausting what seemed like an endless supply of water, they are now finding ways to both conserve and get more from the resources at their disposal.
These date palms are legendary. They grow outside Nifta, an oasis town in southern Tunisia, and produce famously good quality fruit. They are pollinated by hand to ensure high yields. For centuries, natural springs provided an abundance of water which helped the palm trees flourish.
This oasis is known as the basket because it's shaped like a basket of fruit. It used to have 152 sources that provided 700 liters per second.
Because water was plentiful, the plantations were expanded. That is, until the springs dried up about 20 years ago. Now, groundwater has to be pumped up from a depth of 100 meters. Patrick Ali Louarghi runs an ecotourism lodge in Nifta. Together with engineers, architects, and artists, he's trying to keep the oasis alive. To do that, he's focusing on sustainability.
Basically, we're doing a lot of experimenting. We're looking for a new direction or a new orientation for Tunisian cuisine. And perhaps we'll start a trend, set a course for a new way of eating in these regions.
The vegetables used in the hotel kitchens come from permaculture gardens in the oasis. They grow in mixed cultivation under fruit trees, which in turn are shaded by the huge date palms. In this way, the plants protect one another from the heat. Another company in Nifta is also committed to sustainability. American entrepreneur Kevin Clay makes a low-calorie sweetener from imperfect dates that would otherwise be discarded. The product is in demand. Clay now employs 9 people.
So here at our facility in Nefta, we are buying up some of the reject dates that are being sorted and they're being thrown out generally to feed camels or other animals. And we are drying them out and grinding them into a powder that is very nutritious and can be used as a sugar substitute and exporting that.
In an effort to preserve the remote oasis for generations to come, entrepreneurs in Nifta are striking a balance between the old and the new, as well as showing that it's possible to run a thriving business even when using resources sparingly.
From Tunisia, we follow the path of many migratory birds and head north to southern Spain. Each year, around 5 billion birds fly between Africa and Europe.
That's a lot of air traffic, Sandra. The journey is long and dangerous. And once they've landed, they'll see that a lot has changed in their European refuge. For one thing, there's a lot of plastic in the landfills, which are often feeding grounds for the birds.
Waterproof clothing is a must here. Andy Green and Victor Martin are biologists. They're looking for seagulls in a lagoon called Fuente de Piedra. It's located between Malaga and Seville in Spain.
I've grown fond of them in the meantime. As the years go by, you learn to appreciate these animals. Society gives them a bad rap, but their intelligence surprises us again and again.
Most of the birds overwintering here are lesser black-backed gulls. The migratory birds come here in their thousands during the fall, from colder climes in the north. But there's something wrong. More dead gulls than usual.
Did it eat plastic?
Yeah, maybe.
We're finding bits of plastic all over the place. This, for example, is a bottle label. And here's a chicken bone. Pieces of glass, part of a bottle. Yet we're in a conservation area, where many migratory birds spend the winter. But this place is at risk from high levels of contamination.
It's the gulls themselves that are bringing in the garbage, in their stomachs. They leave it behind in their excrement and vomit.
No black-backed gulls overwintered here before the mid-1980s. They were only found on the coast. Then they figured out it was much easier to find food inland at the rubbish dumps that appeared here.
The ritual is the same each morning. Flocks of birds arrive at the landfills, gulls, storks, and other waterfowl. So the rubbish doesn't stay in the landfill, but biologist Victor says humans are to blame, not the birds. To this day, 90% of garbage in Andalusia isn't separated until it arrives at the open landfills. Victor takes the samples from the lagoon to a laboratory in Seville, and yet again his colleague Julian Cano can see particles of plastic through his microscope. The researchers fear it's a dangerous cycle.
Other animals that hunt these contaminated waterfowl end up eating the foreign objects as well. And the higher they are up the food chain, the more waste they accumulate in their bodies.
And humans might be at the top of that chain. It's not just microplastics that pose a threat. Chemicals, antibiotics, and pathogens are even more harmful.
Multi-resistant bacteria are the biggest problem. The gulls bring the antibiotics and the germs into the wetlands, where they're transferred to other bird species. Ducks, for example, that then transport them to cities and parks.
The gulls repeatedly provide them with new clues. Thanks to the birds' detective instincts, the scientists have made some unsavory discoveries.
We noticed that the birds kept flying off in a certain direction. There had to be something attracting them. So we went to have a look and found an illegal dump.
So, despite their bad reputation, the gulls are inadvertently doing their bit for the environment. No wonder they hold such fascination for these biologists.
Researchers in Cameroon's Ebel forest are also observing animals to draw conclusions about their habitats. As one of the world's biggest rainforests, it's a hotbed of biodiversity and a refuge for a number of endangered species. Deforestation and poaching pose a threat to these unique habitats. But there is hope. The Gorilla Guardian clubs are fighting back.
This rainforest can only be reached on foot. Jean Titir and the Ebel Forest Research Project team are on the lookout for rare primates.
Oh, look, that's a gorilla's nest. They usually build them on the ground. After their evening meal, they make themselves a place to sleep. We have 11 primate species here, including gorillas, chimpanzees, drills, and Preuss's red colobus monkeys.
The primates are in high demand with poachers who can sell them as bushmeat. Jean Titir also used to make his living that way. But for most of the last 10 years, he's only studied their tracks to find out which animals are traveling where in the forest. He lives in Ibuti on the edge of Ebel Forest, one of the 3 villages that are taking part in the project.
I have grasped what impact poaching has, and anyway, it's not really a profitable business. Okay, yes, you can earn a bit, but the income is very irregular. That's why I decided to stop hunting.
Usually now, he only gets to see the animals in video footage. The researchers have set up 17 trial cameras in the part of the forest where gorillas live. Besides chimpanzees and gorillas, these forest elephants are also threatened with extinction. And the extremely shy drills are particularly at risk. The Ebel Forest Research Project was set up by the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance, which supports primate conservation. It's been collaborating with the villagers for more than 10 years. Many of them used to be poachers. Now they've learned to collect data on the animals or set up camera traps. Anyone who wants to take part must join a Gorilla Guardian Club. Then they get paid for their work.
We have to thin out the clearing a bit so the camera isn't obstructed.
Once a month, the team spends a few days venturing deep into the rainforest. They use compasses and GPS to find their way. Marcel Ketchen has been part of the team for 9 years. The environmental scientist records precisely where each animal trail is found. What's particularly interesting are the movements of the around 25 gorillas that were discovered here in 2002. Up to then, there were only 2 known gorilla subspecies in Cameroon, one group living south of the Sanaga River and another hundreds of kilometers away to the north.
So the reason why we are collecting these samples is to do some genetic analysis to find out how related the gorillas of Ebel are to those found south of the Sanaga and the Cross River gorillas. It's very significant. And if these analyses are finally come to a conclusion, we might realize that in Cameroon, instead of having 2 subspecies of gorillas, we might be having a 3rd one.
Ebel Forest in southwestern Cameroon covers an area of almost 1,500 square kilometers and borders on Nigeria. It is part of a large rainforest region, the 2nd largest worldwide after the Amazon in Brazil. To protect the rainforest in the future, the project aims to include the residents of the more than 40 villages surrounding the forest. The 3 villages taking part in the project so far all have a Gorilla Guardians Club. To enable the residents to feed their families without having to resort to poaching, they can join the local club. Here they get help to buy livestock or plant vegetables or cocoa. Like here in Ibuti, there is a small school in the other 2 villages on the edge of the forest. The teachers receive training from the scientists, and protecting the forest and its animals has become a fixture of the curriculum.
What kind of animal is that?
A gorilla, ma'am.
The idea is to raise awareness about the topic among the youngest villagers.
What I like about the course is the gorillas. They are like people. And what I learned is that hunting isn't good because animals are like people.
The project has made many of the villagers see the forest with different eyes. Like Jean Titil, some 90% of the one-time poachers have become farmers. And that's what the children see while they grow up. But the Gorilla Guardians clubs don't want things to stop there.
We want a no-go zone to be created, in which the measures to guarantee the survival of the gorillas are respected, because the species is in danger of extinction.
That's why he only takes his children to the edge of the forest.
Look here, this trail. What animal left that trail? A porcupine.
He wants his children to know about animals, but he also wants them to know when to leave the forest to its inhabitants.
Once again, we've shown that being careful with nature and treating it with respect is more important than ever. We'll see you next week with a new edition of Echo Africa. Until then, I am Chris Alem signing off from Lagos, Nigeria.
Thank you, Chris, and a warm goodbye from me too here in Kampala. In the meantime, please do stay in touch with us on all our social media platforms. We'll be waiting to hear from you. See you soon and wishing you the best from here.